Tell you folks, I know I'm going to love this show. This one we're doing today and every week. So the SEC live show comes your way every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Make sure you're subscribed. Subscribe to the SEC channel. If you're watching on the main channel right now, the SEC channel link is in the description section of the video. Head on over there. It just means more. We're going to dive into that. It just means more. Does that mean you're the best? Will that mean you're the best in the future? We will look at the past, the present, and the future of the SEC. It is recruiting season in the SEC and across the country. Please check out the live stream we did with Texas, Arkansas. We highlighted Arkansas on the Texas show. They've got a November date. We're looking at opponents and great conversation with John Neighbors from Locked On Hogs. And that's over on the Texas channel from last night. Monday night, our Texas show. So SEC fans get locked in on our Oklahoma channel as well, the Texas channel as well. The Texas live show, Horns Huddle, is every Monday at 7 Eastern time. All right, right here and now, for lack of a better topic, and I say that in a way to say that, to me, this is a great topic. I could always debate and dive into this topic, especially considering realignment has impacted this greatly, or we shall see how much realignment has impacted best conference in college football. All right, so let's start with this premise. The SEC is the best. If you are an SEC fan, I'm sure you already take pride in that. If you have needed me to confirm that, I have just done it, as I have many times. The SEC is the best conference. If you have an issue with that, if you think that's debatable, please call the show. Please call me up and we will discuss it. So we don't know what's going to happen in 2024. We don't know. We think we know, and we're going to be probably 75% right because a lot of things don't change in college football. The elite generally do not change. The elite have been the elite for quite some time. That doesn't seem to be changing, but there is a lot of change, a lot of ebb and flow in college football. Michigan State's a much different program today than it was 10 years ago. Ole Miss is a different program than it was 15 years ago. We can give you plenty of examples. All right, but at the crux of the matter is, first and foremost, the tenet that the SEC is the best conference. That has yet to be proven otherwise. It has been the best conference for roughly 15 years. Plus, before that, there was an argument. We were sitting here 25 years ago, and it was 1998, 1999. The Big Ten was coming off some prosperous years. The Big 12 was really strong at the top. We could have an argument at that point. An argument, although we looked back, the SEC was still the best then. But it was close. It was an argument. All right, the SEC took over in 2005, 2006, 2007, in that range, and then went on a run that simply has not stopped. Okay, I understand there will be some people that are probably mumbling to themselves or to the screen right now that Michigan won the national championship last year. Yes, they did. Yes. The SEC is not going to win every national championship. That doesn't mean it was not the best conference. It was still the best conference last season. By a huge measure? With a huge gap? No. I have taken exception through the years of the SEC narrative being overplayed. So while the SEC has clearly been the best conference, and again, if you would like to debate that, please call the show. The link is in the description section of the video. The link's on my Twitter page. The link has also been placed by Jackson and myself right here in the chat. So please give me a call if you have any issues with the statement that the SEC has been the best conference in college football for the past 15 plus years. It's just simply not debatable. But by saying that, I'm saying I welcome a debate on that topic. All right. So that brings us to the here and now. We know the history. We know the dominance. We know what it's been in recent memory. It's not close. It is just freaking not close. And I say it every year after the conclusion of the season. I say, I wish it was close because I would love to be able to crunch numbers and really have to determine best conference. But we don't have to do that. But maybe in 2024, we will. Maybe in 2024, we will have to have long, arduous, fun debates about best conference. Maybe this is the year, or maybe this season will be just the beginning. Is 4 better than 2? Well, 4 is more than 2. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's better than 2. So the Big Ten is, of course, the likely candidate to challenge the SEC. It's the only reasonable candidate. We have 2 other conferences now, not 3. The Pac-12 gone by the wayside, and that has only profited the Big Ten. So now we only have 4 conferences to measure and compare and debate. And that's not even really a worthwhile exercise. Unfortunately, I wish it was. The Big 12 will not be competing with the SEC and the Big 10 at the top. The Big 12 is a nice conference, fun conference, deep conference. Deep in mediocre teams. Not horrible teams, not bad teams, not Vanderbilt, not Indiana, but really bad, really marginal teams. Most of those marginal teams get completely discarded off these type of conversations and discussions and debates because people are focused on the top. People are focused on the elite, comparing the elite. I think that that's the most important portion of the conversation is comparing the elite. But if we're truly comparing the conferences, they have to be compared from top to bottom. So yes, it does matter to me. Doesn't need to matter to you. We all have our own opinion, have our own right to care about what we want to care about. But when comparing the conferences, if Vanderbilt goes out and loses 4 non-conference games, loses to FCS teams and Group of 5 teams, and loses to a Wake Forest, does that matter in this conversation? Yeah, it does. It's part of the measurement. They are in the SEC. Does it matter as much as on the top end if Georgia, the number 1 preseason team, goes through the season, wins the national championship? Is that more significant to offset that just bottom feeder performance? Absolutely it is. It's just more important. It's more meaningful. But it all needs to be taken into consideration. So back to the additions of Oklahoma and Texas versus Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA. But we start not from a dead start, even start. We start with the SEC significantly ahead of the Big Ten. Take away these 6 additions. Let's go back 2 seasons. And the SEC significantly better than the Big Ten. And when I use the word significantly, I try to measure my words. Not, is it a blowout? Is it a joke? Is it not even in any way conceivable that the Big Ten could catch up? No, it's not that much of a gap. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State can play with the SEC's best. Wisconsin, Iowa, those schools can play with the second and third levels of the SEC in most years. But it's not debatable. It's not that close. There is a gap. It is significant, meaning it's decided. It's there. March through any metric comparing these 2 conferences or comparing all the conferences, and the SEC will come out on top in recent history. Okay. But what does that mean for 2024? Well, it means a lot because most of these schools are going to continue to be the schools, the football programs that they have been entering this season. Alabama loses the greatest coach of all time. They have replaced him with a very capable coach who is proven to build programs, sustain programs, perform at an elite level. Will he do that in the SEC at Alabama? Well, the Nick Saban standard needs to be put away, locked up, and preserved and admired for history forever, because Kalen DeBoer is not going to do what Nick Saban accomplished. And if we're sitting here 15 years from now and he has, I will certainly call myself wrong, and I think I'll be wrong with everyone else. Because even if Nick Saban, even if we went back to 2007 and laid it out there for Nick Saban to accomplish what he accomplished, I don't know that he could repeat what he accomplished. And I think that the Nick Saban era, tenure, from what I hear out there, is pretty accurately perceived. Alabama lost some games in which, with another touchdown, another score here, another break there, could have elevated them to even greater dominance. That's unthinkable. But if there wasn't a kick six in 2013, and we could mention some other situations in which Alabama would have benefited from a bounce of the football that would have given them more opportunities to win more championships. Again, if that's conceivable. On the flip side, Alabama got lucky. They got fortunate, and they took advantage of their fortune at other times. And I could run through those, but that's not why we're here right now. So the Alabama Nick Saban dominance is over to that degree. Now, whether Kalen DeBoer can sustain national championship contention year in, year out, that remains to be seen. He's given us indication, shoot, if he can get Washington to a national championship game in which they were able to get by the likes of Oregon, one of the 6 or 7 best teams in the country, twice, and Texas, one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the country, to get to a national championship game with Washington's roster, with the resources he had there compared to Alabama. I know he's got a tougher fight and a bigger challenge going through the ranks through the SEC, but the opportunity is opened up. I don't know. I don't want to pretend to know what the impact of a 12-team playoff is going to be on the haves versus the have-nots, the opportunities for an ACC team to win a national championship. And more so than that, the Big 12. The ACC still has 2 definite programs and one with potential to break into the elite. Some people would argue that Florida State's elite right now. I got to see more. But they're certainly a top program, once again, under Mike Norvell. But the ACC, it's kind of ironic that, as I've stated from the beginning of all this realignment of college football shifting and the entire sport shifting and changing and transitioning, I've said it for years now, the Big 12 has been protected by its mediocrity. And we'll see if that continues. We saw rumors about Utah last week that have, I believe, been squashed as untrue, just rumors. Utah going to the ACC. No, the Big 10 or the Big 12, if you are a mid-tier program or a second or third tier program, is the place to be. You are protected. You're protected by the mediocrity of the league, in that the SEC and the Big 10, by all indications thus far, do not want you. But you're also not going to fall apart because there's no better landing spot elsewhere. The Pac-12 is gone and the ACC is crumbling. So the Big 12 has been fortified by sheer numbers. just adding schools. Let's just add as many schools as we can. And Brett Yormark, for all the people that have misheard, I guess, my take on Brett Yormark and his leadership of the Big 12, because I certainly, every time I post a response to what Brett Yormark has stated, and I believe there's been about 3 videos of that nature in the last month, please check them out, that I have a bunch of Big 12 fans that come after me saying that I hate the Big 12, and I don't think they're really listening. Don't think they're listening. Or they are just naive and doing their best to put their head in the sand and not really understand their place in college football right now. Their place is as a second-class citizen. That's all there is to it. I didn't say that, and I just said it. I didn't determine it. Don't blame me. I'm just the messenger. I'm just telling the truth. I am just stating what's obvious. If you're given a 32% cut of the college football playoff revenue in what has always been an equal and even distribution among all the teams in the Power 5, now Power 4, and suddenly that's gone from a 50-50 proposition, or what the even split has been, I guess 2020, 2020, 20, minus the group of 5. And suddenly you're down to a 58-32 ratio. You're a second-class citizen. You can't get around numbers. You cannot get around the sheer fact of that situation, what that tells us. Sorry, Big 12 fans. I'm sorry. Don't hate on me for just delivering facts and then putting those facts into reasonable, logical context. Not my fault. Get mad at the SEC and the Big 10. Get mad at the Big 12 for not being better. I don't know, or being more popular. That's what it is right now. It's a popularity contest, which is also connected to winning. The biggest brands are in the Big 10 and the SEC. So now back to this gap between the SEC and the Big 10 and whether it will close this season or in the future. So by rough estimate, and we will check the chat to see if anybody's made any comments that need any kind of response. Okay. Please hit me up with any comments or questions there in the chat, and I will get to them. Super chat's available. We appreciate your contribution. Also, the phone line is in the chat as well. So let's term it this way. On a scale of 1 to 100, this is just ballparking it. If the SEC over the last 15 years, let's look at the last 15 years as it pertains to 2024. So if something happened in 2009 and has nothing to do with what's going on now, get rid of it. Good example would be Stanford is a completely different program than it was 10 years ago. Completely different program. It might as well just be a completely different football program. Ohio State's not a different program than it was 10 years ago, even despite a different coach. Same football program. So some football programs have been able to maintain regardless of the leadership or the head coach. Some ride the wave of, we got a great coach, he can do something here, or not. What's the schedule look like this year? So there's a lot of fluctuation with certain programs. Stanford's probably the best example. They just came right off the top of my head, but I don't know that there's a better one. This was a program that was one of the top, I wouldn't have said that they were one of the top 5 programs in the country, but they were playing at that level. They were playing like a top 5 team for about 5 years. And then they were more in the end of the David Shaw era, as he was going through 2016, 17, 18. They were more like a top 20 team, and now they're awful. They are the worst. They are so bad that Vegas gives Wake Forest twice as good of odds to win the ACC championship as Stanford. That's how bad Stanford is. So all over the place. Ohio State, same program as 10 years ago. They would be the best example of consistency, I would think, because Alabama, we got to wait to see Kalen DeBoer. 10 years ago, Kirby Smart, that was pre-Kirby Smart. Mark Richt, Georgia, they were really good, but they were not Georgia today. Best program in college football, and I will make that statement. I do believe that Georgia is the best football program in the country. Spots 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we could argue Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Texas. So I say that to say this. The metrics all favor the SEC going into 2024 as the best conference. And if, again, I'll get back to my ballpark scale to try to give you a picture, a vision in your head. Where do these conferences rank right now? How do they stand up against each other? I'd say if you're going to go 1 to 100 and you're going to give the SEC a 90, then the Big Ten's like a 75 and the Big 12's like a 40 and the ACC is like a 35, something like that. And again, this is just to paint a picture. So don't get wrapped up in the numbers too much. What we're getting at here is that the SEC has added Oklahoma and Texas. Wow. So that happened, of course, 1 year prior to the Big Ten adding USC and UCLA. So at that point, wow, the Big Ten's still sitting at 14. The SEC goes to 16 with two of the storied brands in the history of college football. Two remarkable brands. So the Big Ten countered with USC and UCLA. Oklahoma, Texas, USC, UCLA. I believe we would all agree. And if we don't agree, again, you can give me a call. It's in the description section. It's also on my Twitter page. It's also here in the chat. Give me a call. Oklahoma, Texas. Significantly, decidedly better additions than USC and UCLA. Not because of USC, but obviously because of UCLA. UCLA is not in that tier. They are not in that group. They're the one that doesn't belong. Texas, Oklahoma, USC. And of course, at the time, USC has been stumbling and bumbling a bit. I think maybe their downturn under Clay Helton's been overstated. They did win a Pac-12 championship, did win a Rose Bowl, did win about 70-some% of their games. But yes, they are not the USC of John McKay, John Robinson, Pete Carroll. And they're still trying to get back to that level, and they are not there. They're one of the 20 or 25 best teams in the country. Until proven otherwise, and maybe they will do it, with a retooled defense under D'Anton Lynn, Miller Moss at quarterback, we will wait on USC. But UCLA clearly is not in the scope of those other brands and programs, both historically and certainly right now. UCLA is not a good football team. They're not a strong football team. That's all there is to it there. We will pick up this conversation, but we've got the fine Mr. Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football stopping by to talk some Kentucky football with us. Hey, Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Mark. How are you doing? Didn't want to interrupt your train of thought there you had going, but I know
I can talk that 24/7, 365. I can compare conferences and ramble on and let me rant and rave. So we can pick it up at any time.
Gotcha.
No issue there.
I gotcha.
Is the SEC still the best conference?
You know what? You could say I'm biased, but I think it is, especially with the addition of Oklahoma and Texas. I don't see. I mean, I know obviously the Big Ten is added, Washington, Oregon. The Big 12 has added teams. I still say the top to bottom, probably the SEC is still the top conference. But like I said, that could be bias, however you want to look at it. But that's my opinion anyway. So
Well, Kevin, I just you probably missed this, but I gave it on a scale. I was ballparking this. I didn't want people to hold me to it. This was just a ballpark just to get us started. On a scale of 1 to 100, I was giving the SEC a 90 and the Big Ten a 75. That's about where I think we are in terms of a gap between the two conferences until proven otherwise. The SEC was certainly the better conference last year and has been for 15 or plus years. And I don't think that I think the Big Ten may have made 4 additions that stay in the range of the 2 of the SEC, or maybe even surpass them slightly, but just until proven otherwise, not enough.
Yeah. I would, you could make the case at the very top that the Big Ten is, as strong or maybe even stronger than the SEC when you throw in, Ohio State, Michigan, and then you have, Georgia, Alabama. I think this year Ole Miss is going to be up there. Then, of course, as I said earlier, you had Texas A&M or not Texas A&M, Texas and Oklahoma, and like I said, it's kind of I can see either way, but I still think 1 through 16. I don't think anyone's stronger than the SEC, but that's one person's opinion. But hey, that's what we're here for, right? It's to share our opinions and talk about stuff.
That's it. So who's stronger than Kentucky?
Nobody. I'm just kidding. Well, I have to real quick shout out. Kind of exciting times down here in Lexington. Kentucky, first time ever, made it to the college baseball World Series. They were the only SEC team who had never been, and they came in as a number 2 seed behind, yes, Tennessee. You were number 1, and you guys deserved it. So there you go, a little Tennessee shout out. They swept Oregon State over the weekend, and so they're headed to Omaha for the first time ever. They'll play North Carolina State Saturday afternoon. So it's kind of interesting. The college baseball World Series, it's all made up of teams from the SEC and the ACC. So it's kind of weird how that worked out.
Well, I didn't know that. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. I stopped covering college baseball about 25 years ago and have not really paid much attention to it. But I got to say that I did greatly enjoy it. So my story was coming from the Midwest. College baseball was dead in Ohio. Nobody cared about college baseball. Mm-hmm. I attended Kent State University, graduated from there, and they were close to going to a couple college World Series with a coach, Danny, can't think of his last name now, went to Georgia Tech and later went to College World Series, and they were really good. You'd go out to the game, there might be 50 people there. Right. But anyway, I didn't even know that they were playing. Like, if I didn't work for the local TV station, mm-hmm. Meaning the campus station, so just non-existent in the Midwest, college baseball, forget it. And then I go to the SEC and worked in the SEC for 7 years, and my eyes were opened to college baseball and what it can look like and what the atmospheres are like, going to Texas A&M for a regional and all the SEC tournaments. And yeah, it was great. Yeah, so just to so the World Series bracket, it's North Carolina plays Virginia, Tennessee plays Florida State, Kentucky plays North Carolina State, and Texas A&M plays Florida. So that's your 8 teams. So Tennessee was the number one overall seed. Kentucky was number 2. So there you go. But a little bit of history as we've talked about over the years. Kentucky. The last few years has become not more than a little more than just a basketball school, and honestly, the last 2 or 3 years, the basketball program has trailed off. Now we'll see if it comes back to where we expect it with Mark Pope as the head coach now that John Calipari is at Arkansas. But anyway, so like I said, it's because they won a championship in volleyball. The track team has won championships. So now we just got to get that SEC championship for Kentucky. So we missed out on the opportunity for to win one of the divisions during the 20 or 30 years where we had the divisions. But now, of course, it's like they do in the other leagues now. It's just the top 2 teams, right, that are going to that will go to the championship game this year. There's no more East and West. So, all right, sir. Football. What's going on with recruiting right now? You got any good news for us?
The Kentucky picked up a. I got to look this up real quick. I was going to say one thing we talked about when from the last time we Kentucky. We were talking about how Kentucky needed help at the. Thought one thing Kentucky needed was help at the quarterback position, and they went out and did that with. They picked up Gavin Wimsatt from previously of Rutgers. He was a guy who was honestly a recruiting rare recruiting miss for Mark Stoops and Vince Marrow, and he took he's from Owensboro and chose to go to Rutgers and played for 2 years at Rutgers. Lost the quarterback job in the spring and put his name in the portal, and like 3 days later signed with Kentucky. So he's going to be a guy who will give Brock Vandegrift, some help because we know Vandegrift, he has all the talent in the world, but he doesn't have a lot of reps in game he basically played a lot in the cleanup roles with Georgia. So this is going to be his first attempt at being a starting quarterback. And what Wimsatt offers is a guy who's been in the league, played 2 years in the Big Ten. With Bush Hamden, with his offense, his new offense, he really likes quarterbacks who can run and pass. And obviously, Wimsatt, his passing stats don't really wow you, but he's a heck of a runner. So that was one thing that very, very a big pickup, I think, for Kentucky. I still think they need to pick up it would not surprise me to see him look for a running back, maybe as the summer goes on, because they have Chip Trainium and they have Demi Sumbo Carmbe, but behind that, there's not a whole lot of depth or experience. So I would not surprise me to see them look for running back there. But as far as recruiting, they got offensive tackle recently. He's a top 500 guy, Darren Stray from Michigan, another guy from Michigan. Kentucky has done. We've talked about this for a while. Kentucky's done very well the last few years with the state of Michigan recruiting, almost to the point where, like they do in Ohio. He's a three-star player. He's a guy that come in and maybe in a year or so be a starting tackle for Kentucky. That's probably the most recent one that we from the last time we've talked. But there's how it goes. There's always recruiting is 24/7 anymore. So you just never know what, somebody could just pop up out of nowhere and kind of thing. So, but anyway, that's the main thing. Just trying to see what's going to happen in the spring, and everybody is really excited, I think, to see what happens with Vandegrift and Trainium, and whether or not Vandegrift can get on the same page with Barry and Brown and Dane Key, because last year they struggled for whatever reason with Devin Leary. It just didn't. They never seemed to be able to be on the same page for whatever reason. So we'll see what happens after that. But that's there's a lot of excitement down here in Lexington for sure about this.
Like you, Kevin, I was a bit surprised by the Gavin Wimsatt acquisition, just because he led Rutgers to its best season in about 10 years. And
right. And they won the Pinstripe Bowl, I believe it was, over Miami. Yep. So, yeah.
And to watch him throw the ball is pretty painful, but he's a great runner, and he's getting better as a passer. His numbers are getting better. Right. But it's just not his game. But like you say, he's a dynamic runner and a powerful runner, and apparently a good leader, because he's been there and he's got a lot of game experience. So he goes to Kentucky, and it's interesting because Brock Vandegrift obviously is highly touted, comes in from Georgia, more of a pocket passer. So they're two very different quarterbacks, but as we all know, guys get hurt. And so it's good to have, regardless of who wins the job here, and I think it's still going to be Vandegrift, would be my guess.
Yeah,
they have a capable backup is a big deal.
Right, and they do have Bo Allen as well, who is who started his career at Kentucky. He's from Lexington Catholic. here, and then transferred a couple of different places and decided to come back here. He has some experience playing in the SEC, and then behind him you have Cutter Boley, the true freshman. So that's why I think it was very important for them to go out and get another guy. You're talking about recruiting a guy I'm really high on. Committed back over Memorial Day weekend is Martellus Carter, a safety from Paducah Tillman. Traditionally, one of the best schools, traditional power schools in Kentucky high school football. 6 foot, 190. You can look at the stats there. He's 215th best player in the country and number 2 in the state of Kentucky for this year's class. And then they said you scroll down and you see another quarterback, Stone Saunders, from up in Pennsylvania. He just actually he was just in Lexington this past week, and kind of like on a visit, and met with Stoops, met with Hamden, pretty much just reaffirmed his commitment to Kentucky. So you've got Vandergrift now, you've got Wimsatt, and then you've got Boley and Saunders for the future. So quarterback positions, Kentucky's looking really good. So at least in my opinion. So, and then we're talking about another running back, Marquise Davis, another player out of Cleveland, big time, a guy that Kentucky thinks can be a big time player for them when he gets to campus next year. So, like I said, they have 7 commits right now. It's 48th, but it's early in the 2025 recruiting cycle. So plenty of time to get more guys for next year. But I think they're off to a really good start, because sometimes with Kentucky you won't see them start signing players or getting players until into the summer or into the fall of the player's senior year. So to already have 7, I know it may not sound like that much, but I think it's it's definitely a good start. So,
Kevin, we're about 5 to 6 weeks away from SEC Media Days, and that will transition right into fall camp, and we'll be off and running toward the season. Is there a position battle that you think is the most interesting going into fall camp?
There's the one thing about it, I think Kentucky at a lot of the positions is pretty well set. Everybody, offensive line, defensive line, maybe in the secondary with could be one possibility. But for the most part, I think your starters are pretty much set. The only thing that would affect that would be injuries, of course, which could always, obviously you don't want to jinx anything, but it seems like Kentucky has had potential with injury, has had issues with injuries over the last couple of years, with one player or another. But yeah, I think most position battles, like I said, I suppose if Vandergrift struggles, then you could have, Wimsatt, jump in as the, as the quarterback. But the one I'm trying to look, I'm trying to think of the guy that I'm drawing a blank here. Like I said, there was I've lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Hey, it's live TV, right?
You're good.
So, but I'll get.
We do appreciate you stopping by, Kevin. Of course, your mind's on baseball.
Yeah. Well, no, I was trying to. No, what I was trying to I was going to get a shameless plug. I just finished a Jaden Smith and Jacob Smith are 2 guys. Kentucky sound like 4 Smiths in the recruiting class for 2024, and all of those guys could be pushing. Some of those guys could be pushing like the defensive linemen, because Kentucky is actually kind of hampered on not hampered, but they're having some injuries on the defensive line. And Stoops is, Deion Walker is obviously the main man there, but some of the other positions, they're only hoping, Stoops says they may only have like 4 or 5 healthy guys up front when they kick off in the fall. But I wanted to do a quick plug. I promised Memorial Day, and I've had a lot of stuff going on. And this weekend, we should have the Last Word on Sports college football first bowl projections. So I hope to have it out on Memorial Day weekend, and it didn't happen. But it make a good Father's Day present for everyone. You can get our first bowl projections. It's obviously it's a different world this year because of the 12-team playoff, and then the top four seeds being the top four teams from the power conferences. And then, you could have a situation like where the number 5 or 6 seed may actually be like the second or third best team, like an Ohio State, Michigan kind of thing, or a Georgia, Ole Miss, where they might be the second or third best team, but, maybe like a 6 or 7 seed just because of, how the process is going to work. So, but that'll be something when it comes out. I'll tag you. And then, if you want to, sometime we can talk about it. You guys can, poke holes in all my picks. It's fine.
It should be fun.
That's what they're for, right? So
absolutely. Kevin, we appreciate you stopping by as always. Everybody catch Kevin's work at Last Word on College Football. And yes, he projects bowl games as well as anybody that I've seen. So
well, thank you. I appreciate that. I had good fortune last year that about I think it was week 6, I said Washington was going to make the playoff, and literally no one else that in college football websites had that. And I stuck with it, even though people were like, no, Oregon is going to win. Oregon's going to win. I said, no, Washington's going to beat them again, and they're going to be in the playoff. And, I got that one right. So nice. Which means, I don't want to brag because what happens then the next time you get everything wrong. But
all right, Kevin, appreciate you being here, man.
Yes,
Stop
sir,
by
Mark.
anytime.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Kevin McGuffey, Last Word on College Football. We always appreciate Kevin stopping by, breaking things down for us on the Wildcats side. We got a caller coming in. Mr. Chris is here. Christopher Foote. Chris, what's going on today? Hello, Chris. Going once, going twice. Chris, you with us? Hello, Chris. One more time for Chris. Give us a call back. All right. Let me play graphics producer at the same time as we're talking to all of you. And again, we will pick up our rant from where we left it off when Kevin joined the show. And that's simply that the SEC has been the best conference, both historically, recent history, 15 years, best going into 2023, despite not winning the national championship, the best conference, but it was pretty close. If you just took off all preconceived notions, all perceptions, and just dealt with the season, the games that were played in the 2023 season, and took them top to bottom, the SEC played the best, had the best results, but it was pretty close. Actually, it was pretty close between all 5 conferences last season. There is not a clear-cut number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Now, do I believe that the SEC was number 1 this past season in 2023 and the Big Ten was number 2? And then after that, it was kind of difficult, but I would go Pac-12 number 3. But in no way would I have any issue. I would not have an issue with anybody calling me up, anybody debating that any one of 3 conferences were the best in college football and putting them in any kind of order, and certainly having the Big 12 and or the ACC close. If you really grind down through the ACC, it's pretty bad. I do believe that the ACC was number 5. They were the worst. But that's just one season. That's just 2023. Now, of course, that's the best indication of what we're going to see in 24. But we have we have a bigger opportunity for change this season. Think about this. I don't know that this has been really delivered in this vein. We have a bigger opportunity for change going from 2023 to 2024 than probably in the history of college football. In meaningful college football, meaning like post World War II. I'm not going to go back to like, there was probably all sorts of seismic changes in 1879 that changed things. I'm talking about during the current structure because of two reasons. Think about this. Biggest possible changes 2023 to 24. I'm going to add to the list because of three factors. Number one, realignment. We are seeing the most teams and the most impact schools. Now, we saw a mass exodus after the Big East imploded, a couple phases of that about 20 years ago. Miami, Boston College, Virginia Tech, Louisville, Pitt, on down the line, Syracuse. But Miami was supposed to matter. It hasn't. Again, if you took the name off of Miami, they have been who over the last 20 years? They've been Minnesota. So they're not relevant on the field, not relevant. So those ACC Big East changes, they changed the landscape of college football. It caused a conference to go away in the Big East, and it meant a whole shift of teams into conferences. But what have those schools done? Next to nothing. In terms of impact, Nebraska left the Big 12 to the Big 10, of course. They had just played in the last two Big 12 championship games in which they were a member of that conference. But their impact in the Big 10, again, not talking financially or terms of brand recognition or anything, just talking on the field. Their contribution and impact on the Big 10, Nebraska fans, sorry to say this, basically zero. Nebraska. If we were having this conversation 25 years ago to think about how great Nebraska football was, 25 years ago, 1999, they had just gone to the 1998 Holiday Bowl and had another tremendous season. And of course, won their third of four national championships the season before that. But today, Nebraska, non-factor, zero. Don't get me wrong. I'm not predicting that for the future. I'm saying their stay in the Big Ten has amounted to nothing. Zero. Okay. So the moves of Oklahoma, Texas, and now the four from the Pac-12 coming to the Big Ten. That's one reason why 2024, separated from 2023, could be the biggest change in college football history. This sounds like a good video right here, because that's point number one, the realignment of six major schools, and five of them have been either on the top of their game recently, or at least their brand is still there, meaning USC. That's point number one. Point number two, the transfer portal. More players shifting teams than ever before. Could make 2024 much different than 23. Point number three, the 12-team playoff. And even though I don't believe that that's creating a landscape of change at the very top, because I will argue that it's going to be more difficult for a TCU to win the national championship than it was 2 years ago when they got blasted by 58 points. They at least got one step away. That there could have been some horrific fluke that night against Georgia, and they could have somehow, it's kind of inconceivable, but they did come 60 minutes away from winning a national championship. TCU. Is that going to be possible going forward? I don't believe so. I don't see them winning 3 games. So it's given more opportunity to more teams. But first of all, the great majority of those teams are going to come from the Big Ten and the SEC anyway. And then number two, those schools are going to have to win 3 or 4 playoff games to win a national championship. So I'm placing the odds of the Big 12 winning a national championship in the next 10 years at 1%. I don't believe in 0%. Otherwise, I would give them 0%. All right, we got Chris coming back.
I'm sorry, Mark. I had myself muted.
No, that's fine. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
I guess if you want to.
What's that?
Nothing. I'm on the camera.
That's great. Good to see you.
I was listening to your show, Mark, and I just happened to compare notes, I guess, because I don't know if you remember, I kind of went back and looked through the history, and assuming I did it correctly, which there's always a chance I maybe didn't, but remember how I kind of got a summary of how they fare against the mean?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't know, I missed some of your show because I didn't tune in until just recent, but I think there's as many as 35 teams that are probably top tier right now. I don't know if that makes sense or not. There's at least 35.
So what's your distinction of 2 tiers? Tier 1 and tier 2?
I'm not making a distinction. I'm just saying that when they expanded the teams that you were talking about, UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington, Oklahoma, and Texas, I think that created one tier that's kind of like at the top that includes Notre Dame. And I think that's as many as 35 teams, if I'm not mistaken. Does that sound about right?
Oh, you're talking about teams in the SEC and the Big Ten?
Well, no, I mean,
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
You're talking about the separation of the P5. It's like it's no longer a P5. It's like a P. I don't know if they're saying it's a P3, P2, P3, or something. Anyway,
well, it's a P4.
Okay, well, whatever. But I know what you're saying. But to get all 4 in, though, that would mean that you would take the top 2. There's 2 tiers then of 35, so that would make it 70. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there are 70 teams in the Power 4 right now. Yes.
Well,
with Notre Dame included.
That, there's separation, though. There's separation between the Big Ten, SEC, and the Big 12 and ACC.
Sure. Yep.
It might not be like a complete break. I mean, there might be like crossover, but anyway, based on performance, it looks like I don't know what the long-term plan is really, but I'm thinking if they want to make it like what to where only the best teams, I guess, advance. One way to do that would be to annex all of them, and so the top 35 that I just told you about, which is the SEC, Big Ten, and the Notre Dame, they could just annex the Atlantic Coast Conference and Big 12. That would give you 70. Does that make sense?
Yes, you're including all the Power 4 conferences and Notre Dame.
No, I'm not really doing anything. I'm just saying that if they want to limit the playoff to the best teams, that's one way that you could do it. You just limit it to the top 70 teams. That might be part of what they're doing anyway. I don't really know.
Somewhat.
Well, I don't know.
There is an automatic group of 5 qualifier.
Well, I understand that, but and you know what? I think I tried to explain that to you too. Not that I know any better. I'm just when those teams separated themselves from the Pac-12, what it kind of did actually, we're going to have maybe not like in formal terms, but at least by the way I do it, you're going to have another P5 conference. It's going to be the Mountain West with Oregon State and Washington State. That's actually you're going to get a G5, but it's really not a G5 because if it includes those 2 teams, there's a fairly decent chance that would be a P5 team, right? If it's Oregon State or Washington State, and even if it's not, I mean, we're talking about a team that's going to be better than 2 P5 teams. So in effect, what we're getting is a P5 even without a P5. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Well, the way that the sport is structured right now, and in relation to the playoff, the best way to define it is that a power conference receives an automatic bid to the playoff as a conference champion and as a top 4 seed.
Well, no, but I'm not trying to contradict you, Mark. I'm just saying you said there's a G5 qualifier. But
there is.
From the Mountain West Conference, really, especially if it's either Oregon State or Washington State, which is I know those aren't technically part of that conference, but I mean, I don't know. Do you think they're really going to not choose one of those two teams if they're better than the other teams? That's kind of my point, I guess. I'm thinking maybe I'm wrong to even suggest it. Maybe because it's still the Pacific 12. Maybe they won't consider it. Is that still an automatic qualifier then? Am I
Well, at
getting it?
least for one season. And I would have to look into this a little further because I don't want to misspeak. But it's my understanding that Washington State and Oregon State are playing this season as independents. They're eligible for the playoff, but they're going to have to be selected as a ranked team in the playoff. They cannot qualify for a Mountain West Conference championship. They're not playing in the Mountain West.
I
They're
thought they
playing a
were.
Mountain West Conference schedule, but they are not eligible for the Mountain West Conference championship.
Oh, they aren't. Okay, well, I guess that's something I didn't know. But at any rate, the fact that they're included, kind of, even though it's not like formally part of the Mountain West, what that kind of does, I think, I could be wrong, so don't quote me, I guess, but I think it puts the Mountain West on a little bit higher of a plane, even though they're probably not the best G5 conference. If a team can go through that, because I think most of the teams are playing both of those schools. If I'm not, I could be wrong, but I think what they did. I mean, I know they're independent, Mark, but they're actually playing. You might want to look into it. I think they're actually playing almost every Mountain West school. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but that was kind of the impression I got. They're scheduling mostly. They're like independents, but they're playing. It's almost like they're playing a Mountain West conference schedule. You haven't seen that?
Yes, that's what I just stated.
Okay.
They are playing a Mountain West Conference schedule, but they are not eligible for the conference championship.
I kind of think it's like a technicality. I mean, I don't know. I
Well,
kind of
it's not
think
a
what's going to happen.
technicality. They don't belong. Okay. As you know,
Go ahead.
Chris,
No,
the
you're right.
Pac-12 is imploded. There is no Pac-12 anymore. There is
No, I
technically a Pac-12, but it really does not exist. The schools have left. And so you have Oregon State and you have Washington State in need of scheduling partners. So the Mountain West reached out and they formed an agreement that they would play Mountain West Conference teams. And so if you look at their schedule, it's loaded with the Mountain West Conference. However, they are not. So this serves the Mountain West Conference well because they get to play higher profile games, number one. But it also serves Washington State and Oregon State because they had nobody to play. They had to fill up a schedule. But they are not eligible to win the Mountain West Conference.
well, that part I guess I'm not clear about, but
Well,
I
I
guess
just made it
I'm trying to
clear. They are not eligible to win the Mountain West Conference. That wasn't my decision. That I'm not saying this is not my decision. I'm not making some declarative statement. I'm just repeating what is fact.
you're probably right.
I'm
I'm not even
well,
disputing it. I'm sorry if I sound like
it's
I am.
not even right or wrong. It's just simply I'm just regurgitating what the announcement was.
But the fact that they're kind of included in the scheduling, though, it's gonna, even if you're right about what you're saying, which I'm sure you probably are, that the fact that they're P5 schools, I mean, there's no two way, you can't really get around it. So the fact that they're playing the Mountain West Conference, that's gonna prop up that to the extent that two games, I guess, matter. That regardless, it's gonna make the Mountain West Conference a little bit closer to an actual P5, I think. I know that they're probably still going to remain a G5, but my guess would be the two teams that are going to play, even if it doesn't include either one of those P5 schools or whatever, they're going to be probably as good as a P5 because they're going to have to maybe not run the table, but to challenge, they're going to probably have to beat at least one of those teams, I would think. Or does it not even matter? Is it just they're counted as independents? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Now that could change going forward because
To be
this
eligible for
probably
the
is the best landing spot for those two schools.
to be conference in the conference championship game, they don't have to beat either one of those schools. They can lose to both of them and still go.
Yes.
Really?
This season until they do something different.
Because I was under the impression with there only being two left, I was under the impression that it might, it might not be likely, but I was kind of thinking maybe the Mountain West would include both of those schools in the fact that they're, playing the Mountain West Conference. I was kind of thinking they might include them in the championship game. That's not going to happen.
No.
Well, what's the point of having the? Because there are only two schools. That means they're going to play in their own championship game.
Uh that they play during the regular season. They play during the regular season. Now, if they want to hold a conference championship game, a Pac-2 conference championship game, I have not seen any announcement to that. That would be a little silly. What this serves the Mountain West is they just made a lot of money. I'm looking at an article right now. Washington State and Oregon State paid them $14 million
Oh, okay.
to
Oh,
to
they're
play
getting
these
paid.
games because they had nobody to play. They needed to play somebody. So they just made over $14 million a game, or I'm sorry, over $1 million per game. So it's similar to when an FCS or a low group of five needs a game to play and they go to Ohio State or Alabama or somewhere and they get gifted over $1 million to come just fill a scheduling spot.
Right. Well, I guess you're still kind of missing the point I'm making. I'm sorry.
Okay, what's the point? I'll try to
All
lock
right.
in on it this time.
If I'm not mistaken, again, correct me if I'm wrong, which I sometimes am. I think we're talking. I just told you there were 70 P5 schools, but that excludes Oregon State and Washington State. They still, unless they're being demoted, which that's the part I'm not clear about, which makes sense even if they are. There's at least 70 schools that are at the P5 level, and so let's
Yep.
just limit it to 70. That still means that by including those schools with the Mountain West Conference, you're getting a better. You can say it's about money or whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. But the two schools that are that they've are partnered with are going to make the Mountain West Conference better. It's kind of my point.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But they're
So
not in the Mountain West Conference.
well,
So
yeah,
you're
those
you're right. They're going to make an appearance look better. The perception's better, but the Mountain West Conference is not better until they officially join the conference.
well, I'm not completely sure if that's true, but regardless,
They haven't joined the conference officially. They've made a scheduling agreement. I'm not
let's
saying that they won't join the conference.
I think that's
Actually, I would guess that they will join the conference.
to me it's like six of one, half dozen of the other. I mean, they're playing the conference game, so maybe
But
they're
if
not
you're
joining the conference.
ineligible to play for the championship, then you are not part of the conference.
Well, maybe they will though.
Maybe they will in the future,
Oh, okay.
but they're not going to change their minds. Well, maybe they will. Shoot, they got 3 months to do it. But as soon as they kick off on August 31st, they're not going to change an agreement that I would think the Boise States of the world wouldn't be too happy if all of a sudden in the middle of the season they decide, you know what, we're going to let Washington State and Oregon State be eligible for this championship
Well, why would that be an issue if they're playing them anyway? That's what I'm trying to.
because they are not part of the conference.
Well, it sounds like they are.
No, they just signed an agreement to schedule games against them.
Okay. Well, at any rate, without beating this horse to death, the way I kind of look at it, though, the fact that they play more P5 schools is going to make it, I guess, it's going to be a little bit harder, I think, to run the table. I guess is kind of what you need to do anyway to get in the playoffs. So I'm kind of thinking that even if it doesn't include the Mountain West, they're going to get a better representative, I think, at the end for the fact that they're included is what I'm thinking is going to happen. But I don't know if you agree with that or not. But like I said, it's going to be a G5 team that gets represented. But unless it's another, I don't know what other team besides maybe a Boise State, or I don't know if you can help me figure it out. But it doesn't have to be Boise State, I guess. But if it's not going to be a team from the Mountain West, then what do you think would maybe be the most likely conference, I guess, to seed one? Or do you have an opinion on that?
The odds, according to Vegas, and we posted a video the other day that had the composite of 8 different services preseason polls, and Boise State and Memphis were the 2 schools receiving the most votes in the
So
group of 5.
that's what decides it is a vote.
No. The college football playoff rankings will decide it.
Yeah, but that's not based on anything material, is it? The whole thing kind of makes me mad a little bit because they don't. I know Liberty got to go last year, but I don't know how they made that decision. I don't know how they chose Liberty. I don't know. I mean, to me,
I didn't agree with the decision. I thought it should have been SMU
oh, okay. I don't
myself.
know, but I'm not saying they made the wrong decision. I'm just saying I don't understand what the process is that they go through to choose a team. And to me, it's like it should be transparent. It should be like one of those things where they don't have to necessarily come and explain it all. I would think they could just say, well, we looked at everything, and the team that we feel like had the best chance of winning was. So that's all they have to do. And to me, it's like they don't even do that. They just kind of say, well, we picked the team, I guess, that we thought had the best resume or something. I don't know what they say, but
That's what they do. They go through the same process. Apparently, they go through the same process as they do with the rest of their rankings. So it's simply they just rank 1 through 25, and the highest G5 team gets to go to the playoff.
They don't base the rankings on. It's not like the BCS where there's like some kind of it's what the committee says is the best team. That's not quite.
Yes, you are right. That is.
How did you feel like Liberty did as far as representation goes?
A poor job. They got annihilated.
Yeah, but they played a good team though.
Yeah, and they got annihilated. So my issue is that SMU went 11-2, and they played in a much tougher conference, and their 2 losses were against Power 5 teams. Liberty played no Power 5 teams and played a much weaker schedule. So SMU, to me, was a clearly better team and should have received that bid. All right, Chris, we'll pick up this conversation at a later date. We would like to focus on the SEC. This is an SEC show, but I appreciate the call.
Well, no, I guess I was going to ask you again. Do you think that it's a good idea to merge those two together?
What, Washington State and Oregon State with the Mountain West?
No, the 70 schools that I was just trying to explain to you.
Oh, I would love that. Absolutely. I would love to see all the schools that are currently playing Power Conference football be retained and be able to continue to play at that level. That would be my hope and wish.
There's the 35 that are they're better than the other. They're better players. They're better players as far as they're a lot better than the other 35. There's a difference between them.
We appreciate the call, Chris.
All right. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye. All right. That about wraps it up here for the SEC Live show on another Tuesday. We'll be back next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. The plan is to go live every day during SEC Media Days and then to make this a daily show, SEC Live, right here at the Voice of College Football each and every day, starting with the SEC Media Days. We've got a deep dive coming up here. So listen up, folks. Wednesday and Friday, we've got a deep dive ACC. So Tony Altimore joining us Wednesday, 8:30 Eastern Time. We're looking at the realignment candidates: Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Miami, Virginia, even, and on down the line in the ACC, and looking at their metrics, their qualifications, what makes them who they are, both from a football standpoint, athletic department, and otherwise. So deep dive on the ACC Wednesday at 8:30 Eastern Time. Also, those are going to be on that show is going to be on the ACC channels, Miami, Clemson, Florida State. And then on Friday, we take a deep dive with the 4 new members of the Big Ten and how they stack up against the rest of the conference. So that's, again, Tony Altimore joining us with the deep dive on the Big Ten, USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon against the Big Ten. That's coming up Friday at 8:30 Eastern Time as part of our Big Ten Live show. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. You have a great rest of your day. Our next show is Iowa Hawkeyes Live at 5:30 Eastern Time. I've got a date with Steve Dace, Michigan Podcast, so we get together at 3:15 to record, and so you will see that later today, my appearance on Michigan Podcast on Steve Dace's channel. So a lot going on here at the Voice of College Football. Keep it locked in, and we will see you soon. Love what I do as a sports commentator. I have definitely been blessed. I enjoy my career. But I got to say, if I could turn back time, I would learn the business side of sports management, how to manage people, how to manage projects, how to manage situations. And then there's also those times in which you feel stuck in a job, stuck in a career, just feeling that there's a dead end and wondering and waiting, when is that break going to happen? Well, unfortunately, I got to tell you, that break is not coming unless you make it happen. Sports is your passion. You love it, you live it, you breathe it. Why not make your passion your career? Introducing Southern New Hampshire University, our sponsor. At SNHU, you will learn the business side of sports, sports management principles, and how to gather and analyze data. This degree will help you prepare for a career as an athletic director, sports information director, marketing manager, and other exciting roles in the sports industry. You'll be able to tap into SNHU's network of graduates working in sports-related organizations. You'll also have the opportunity to take advantage of an internship or an experiential learning course within the field. Your courses are taught by faculty with real-world experience, so you'll have opportunities to connect with people in the industry. And when you graduate, SNHU will be right there to help you with your job search. SNHU is accredited, nonprofit, and has radically affordable tuition. SNHU was voted one of the country's most innovative universities by U.S. News and World Report. Just go to snhu.edu/VOCFB. The link's also in my description section down below to see if you qualify for SNHU's sports management program. You might be eligible for financial aid or have existing college credits that could fast-track your degree at SNHU. Click the link to get started. Your exciting sports management degree at SNHU awaits you. Do it now.